I didn't argue when they said the word community. It sat in the middle of the linen table like a bright lemon, clean, sour, meant to look fresh. "You'll love the new community, Mama," Clara cooed, the fake warmth in her voice matching the fake garden on the wall behind her. Marcus kept nodding at the wine glass, not at me. And Nate, with that realtor's smile he wears even when no one is buying, kept saying, "It's best," the way a butcher says fresh cut. I lifted my water and took a sip that tasted like the first lie I ever swallowed. Before we keep going, let me say this in the same breath as my beating heart. This is Revenge Stories with Michelle, a home for quiet courage and true endings. If my voice is finding you today, if you feel the tide in it, tap like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your voice matters here. Your story matters too. The restaurant was the new place at Pearl Square. White napkins, gold flatware, glass that made you feel underdressed no matter what you wore. They'd chosen a corner booth with a view of the fountain and the street and the future they'd planned for me. I smiled like a woman being measured for a dress she won't buy. Clara kept touching my hand the way a person touches a dog they don't trust will bite, and Marcus talked around numbers like they were cousins he wasn't ready to introduce. "Just a few forms," he said. "You know, so it's easy later." "Later," Nate echoed, "is when things get messy if we don't set them straight now." I looked at the fountain outside. That water fell exactly the same way every second, and still people called it pretty. "Knitting, piano, tai chi," Clara went on. "They even have a studio where you can paint sunsets." "Doesn't that sound peaceful, Mama? I have painted sunsets. None of them live in a room that smells like carpet cleaner." "Sounds organized," I said. Nate cleared his throat. "And the move can be quick. We were thinking tomorrow. There's a unit open. Corner, great light, no stairs. The director said if we sign tonight, it's ours." "That fast," I said, still watching the fountain. "That's safe," he corrected, and Marcus nodded again. I noticed the folder near Nate's elbow. It wasn't thick. Cheap words don't weigh much. The embossed logo on the cover had the kind of tree that corporate people think means care. The tab inside wore my name in a tidy font, Iris Dillo. They had spelled it correctly this time. Good. It would save me 5 minutes later. "Dr. Patel says," Clara began. "Dr. Patel says I am stubborn," I finished for her, turning my head finally, "and that I will outlive my detractors if I quit adding salt to the stew." I let a smile show my molars. "He did not say I should be parked," Clara faltered. "You forgot your burner on twice last week, Mama." "I forgot Nate's birthday 3 times in a row for 6 years," I said. "What does that prove?" Nate's smile narrowed. Marcus's leg bounced under the table. I could hear the napkin ring tapping against his knee like a little clock saying, "Hurry." "Tomorrow is too sudden," I said gently. "Let me sleep one more night under my own roof." "We'll talk at breakfast on my porch. Bring the forms. I'll make cardamom tea." Clara brightened. "Really?" "Of course," I said. "I wouldn't send my life away without a good cup." They relaxed. It's always easy when a woman says yes. They did not see me fold the yes in half and slide it into my pocket like a note to myself. When they dropped me home, Clara hugged me in that delicate way she learned from magazines. Chin lifted, scent forward, arms barely committed. Marcus touched my shoulder like a signature. Nate held the door and said, "We love you," as if he were proving creditworthiness to a bank. I locked the door, then locked the second lock, then the one in my head. There is a way a house sounds when it knows it is being watched. My old blue cottage at Alder Cove creaked like a man clearing his throat. I set the kettle on, then didn't. I sat at the kitchen table where I used to cut coupons with my late husband, Roe. He once told me, "We'll call our first place a cottage even if it's an apartment on the 3rd floor with a window that faces a brick wall. We ended up with a cottage and a window facing the bay. He also told me, if anyone ever tries to write your ending for you, break their pencil. I went to the pantry and moved the sack of flour 2 inches. Behind it, the tin box hummed like a kept secret. I took it out, laid it on the table, and opened it. 2 passports, an envelope of cash, a tiny flash drive I had labeled with nail polish, and a brass key that smelled like old salt. The key to the safe box at an unfamiliar bank in a different town. The letters from Roe tied with the shoelace he won at a carnival in '82, and the card with a number written in a hand that had never learned to shake. "Lorna," I said when she picked up, "do you still know how to run?" "Only when it matters," she said. "Do we lace up now?" "Tonight." "North or south?" "South," I said. "The water there is lazier. It won't push me back. Lorna trained me back when I couldn't pay her. She taught me to hide the plane and feed the obvious and how not to flinch. She used to be a forensic accountant until someone tried to make her count the wrong things. She keeps a small apartment over a deli that smells like pepper and stories. 15 minutes, she said. Don't bring the heavy." I left a note for Clara. It said, "Cardamom at 10. I left it on the porch table under the seashell that pokes you if you don't respect it. Then I took a bag that weighed less than a bad decision, locked the door, and stepped into the different kind of night a woman chooses. The bus station knows everyone's business without asking. The man at the counter offered the 640 southbound and didn't ask why my hands looked steady. Lorna slid into the booth beside me like a habit that stuck. She'd cut her hair again, close to the skull, prison short. Not because she'd been jailed, but because she knows how to keep herself from tangles. "Tea?" she asked, setting a paper cup down. "It's not your cardamom, but it'll keep your mouth busy." "Thank you," I said. They set a trap with napkins and dessert spoons. "Fancy traps," she said. "Never as strong as a slammed door." She opened a folder that didn't look like money. "Let me see the flash." I handed it to her. She plugged it into a little machine she loves more than some people love their dogs. A list bloomed. PDFs, scans, audio files. She smiled. "You've been busy." "I like proof," I said. "Me too." She turned the screen. "Explain." The first folder was labeled Sandgrass. Inside, scans of deeds and transfers and quiet little investments with names like Marina Light, LLC, the kind of names that keep their heads down and pay on time. The second folder, Bay Laurel, held service agreements and staff rosters and a draft charter with the phrase Resident Council circled. The third folder, Silk, was the one that could save me if kindness failed. Audio files. Clara's voice honeyed and hurried, saying, "Mama can't handle the taxes." Marcus saying, "We need a conservatorship now before she gives away the beach lot to some church." Nate snickering, "She'll sign anything if you put tea in front of it." Lorna's eyes went thin. "They'll say it was out of context." "I have hours," I said. "We won't need hours," she said. "We'll need 15 minutes in front of the right person." "Cromer?" I asked. She shook her head. "Cromer died. His son does weddings now. We'll use Rhea. She sues people who steal from old women," Lorna said. "And she doesn't lose because she doesn't start until she's already won." The bus hummed. The old man across the aisle snored like a motorboat. Lorna leaned back and closed her eyes. "Tell me what you want," she said. "I want a clean ending," I said, "and a beginning that tastes like my own tongue." "Then we'll write them both," she said. We got off at South Bay Junction at first light. The sky over the marsh looked like an apricot peeled with a thumb. I could smell the water and the old piers and the rust and the slow boats that never learn to hurry. The cab driver had a toothpick and a crossword and no interest in my life, which is the politest thing anyone can offer at dawn. "Harbor Row," I said, handing him the brass key so he could admire it in the mirror and invent the rest by himself. The safe box was not in a bank shaped like a cathedral. It was in an old building that used to be a fish market and now pretends to be a credit union. The clerk looked at my passport and then at my face and made the small nod that means, "Our secrets are safe, if yours are." We went down the stairs to the room where people put their past away. The box slid out on small rails that squeaked like mice. Inside, the original deeds Ro and I did not tell anyone about, the trust documents that skip Clara and Marcus and go to an entity named Harborlight Commons, the letter to myself I wrote the day I realized love without respect is a fever, and the letter to Clara I wrote the day she accused me of hiding money and then borrowed $500 anyway, the certified doctor's evaluation dated last Tuesday that says my mind is clear as a bell that wants to be rung. "Good," Lorna said, flipping pages, stacking what we needed, kissing what we didn't. "We go back by noon. We call Rhea in the car. We tell your children to meet you at your porch at 10. We make tea, we pour it, and we let the morning do what mornings do. You're sure?" "Iris," she said, using my whole name like a slap and a blessing. "I'm not in the habit of being unsure. We got home at 9:50. The gulls screamed like someone told them a lie they didn't buy. I set the kettle on for real this time. The cardamom pods cracked under my knife and gave up the smell of old kitchens and long survival. I arranged cups the way my mother taught me when money was a rumor. When I opened the porch door, there they were. 3 people I made with my body, and a 4th I tolerated for the sake of peace. Clara had on her softest sweater and the worried eyes she uses when she wants to look like a daughter from a commercial. Marcus wore a jacket that made him look important. Nate's smile was a business card. "My sweet mama," Clara said, stepping forward. "Sit," I said, because sometimes a command is kinder than a plea. They sat. I poured. We listened to the ocean fill the silences they didn't know what to do with. Nate cleared his throat. "We brought the forms, Iris." "I know," I said. "I brought something too." Lorna came out of the kitchen carrying not cookies but a small speaker. She set it on the table like a new kind of fruit. Rhea followed her, a compact woman with a braid down her back and a ring on her left hand that looked like a moon. She nodded at me and then at my children as if she knew exactly which of us would be speaking truth today. "Who?" Marcus started. "Rhea Calder," she said lightly. "Counsel. I represent your mother's interests as of this morning." She said it like she was pointing out the weather. Nate tried the smile that usually gets him keys. "We already have counsel." "For yourselves," Rhea said. "That's fine. You will likely need more later." Clara's eyes widened at me, then darted to Lorna. "You planned this?" "I learned to plan when you learn to take," I said softly. Rhea tapped her phone and the speaker woke. Marcus's voice came out first, bright and greedy. "A conservatorship and we're done. She'll fuss for a week and settle." Nate chimed in. "We can list the beach lot by Tuesday." Then Clara, with that breathy tone she uses on waiters and doctors. "If she signs the power of attorney, we're golden." Clara went pale like a sheet that never sees the sun. Marcus stood up, then sat, then stood. Nate smoothed his tie with a hand that had never learned to shake. "I want you to look at me," I said. "Really look." They did. I let them see it. The iron I've always worn under my sweater, and the forgiveness I keep like a coin in my bra. I slid an envelope across to each of them. "Read." "Medical evaluation," Rhea explained. 2 physicians. "Cognitive testing. Iris is competent, high score, sharp enough to cut cloth." Marcus swallowed. Clara's lip trembled. Nate looked at the bay and saw for the first time that it is older than his career. "Here's the second thing," I said, handing them a paper as thin as a blade. "A cease and desist from my counsel regarding any attempt to transfer, list, refinance, pledge, borrow against, or otherwise manipulate properties titled to me or my entities, including Harborlight Commons." My voice didn't rise. Quiet hurts better. Harbor light. What? Marcus asked. The thing you didn't see, I said, because you only look where money is loud. Rhea folded her arms. We can keep this on a porch with tea, or we can move to a courtroom where the light is worse and the benches are hard. Your call. We're family, Clara whispered, a line too smooth from extra use. That is why we are on a porch, I said. Otherwise, you would be hearing this in front of a judge who does not care about your soft sweater. Nate tried to recover. This is all misunderstanding. We were worried. She leaves the stove on. I leave men on, I said. Stoves I respect. Lorna's laugh was a small, happy cough. Rhea's mouth twitched. Marcus looked at his hands and saw they were empty. Let me tell you what happens next, I said, and my voice surprised me by how steady it was. You will hear the truth, plain and simple. Then you will choose. If you choose wrong, the law will walk you out of this life in a way that is dignified for all of us. If you choose right, you will work harder than you ever have for something you cannot sell. Clara blinked. What does that mean? It means you want my money, I said, and you cannot have it. It means you want my house, and you will never again put one sheet of paper on my kitchen table without my say. It means I have built something you didn't care to learn the name of, Harbor Light Commons. It is a real project with permits and rebar and a budget and a garden plan and a resident council that will veto anything that smells like pity. Marcus snorted. A charity? A mirror, I said, for people your age and mine to see who they are. Rhea placed a second set of documents on the table. Iris has created a network of trusts that funds Harbor Light Commons and 3 sister sites already in pre-development. The board is in place. Ms. Calder, me, is counsel of record. Ms. Vance, Lorna, is oversight on forensic and audit. Your names do not appear anywhere because you have not done anything yet to deserve ink. Nate finally lost his polish. This is extortion, he hissed. This is accountability, Rhea said. Different vowel. Clara's eyes filled. Mama, you can't cut us out. I can. I should. And I almost did. I took a breath that tasted like the tide. But I have seen enough to believe in second chances for people who can carry them without dropping them on someone else's foot. So here it is. The only inheritance you will ever be offered while I am alive. They leaned in like children do when the teacher reaches for the map. You will work at Harbor Light for 5 years, I said, on the ground, not on paper. You will push wheelchairs and plant seedlings and file incident reports and sit with a woman at 3 a.m. when her loneliness is a cough. You will learn the names of the nurses and the night staff, and you will bring coffee without being asked, and you will miss Christmas brunch because a boiler failed, and you will not complain in the room where the residents can hear you. Marcus laughed once. You can't be serious. Rhea slid her card across the table. If you decline, I'll file these at noon. Petition for protective order, police complaint for financial exploitation attempts with supporting audio, and a civil action for intentional infliction of emotional distress. I'll also send a courtesy packet to the licensing board that has questions for Mr. Nathaniel Kerr. Regarding certain transactions, I'm sure he would rather not explain on camera. Nate's jaw worked. Clara stared at her cup. Marcus looked at his reflection in the window and didn't like it. What do we get if we say yes? Clara asked, finally looking like my daughter and not a stranger in my sweater. You get work, I said, and the chance to become people I can die proud of. That's not money, Marcus muttered. It is something money keeps trying to buy and failing, I said. Respect. We sat with the tea and the gulls and the wind. Lorna checked her watch, and Rhea made a note, and I watched the faces I made with my own body learn shapes that might save them. Fine, Marcus said. 5 years. Then what? Then we talk again, I said. If you've become who you keep introducing yourselves as, I will change the plan. Not to hand you a pile of cash, to hand you a mission with my name carved into it so you can never sell it off without telling the world who you became. And if we quit, Nate asked, because he always wants the exit first. You'll survive, I said. You're the kind of men who always do. But you won't survive on my porch. Clara wiped her eyes. When do we start? Monday, Rhea said. 8 a.m. Wear shoes that know how to work. They left with their folders. They walked down my path like people who had just remembered they were mortal. I stood on the porch with Lorna and Rhea and the last of the tea. The ocean clapped against the rocks. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me yet, Rhea said. You'll hate me by month 3. That means we're doing it right, Lorna stretched. I'll set the audit cadence. Monthly. If they steal a paperclip, I'll make them pay for the whole desk. I don't want revenge, I said, and I meant it in the way you mean a thing when you've tasted it and found it bitter. You want justice that looks like work, Rhea said. We can do that. The first week at Harbor Light looked like a punishment and a prayer. The site was a gutted school on a hill with a view of the water and a parking lot that needed to be convinced it was a garden. The crews were a mix of Union Saints and neighborhood uncles and a woman named Zuzu, who could lift 3 bags of cement without swearing. The project manager, Angel, had a shaved head and a calm voice and a tattoo of a lighthouse on her forearm. She handed Marcus a shovel and pointed to a line of string. Trench here. 6 inches. No deeper. Don't chase your shadow. She handed Nate a clipboard. Inventory the donated fixtures. Count like you mean it. If you lie to me, I'll know because I know where everything sleeps. She took Clara to a room with a window that knew how to forgive. We set this up for intake, Angel said. You'll sit with women who are moving their whole history in 2 suitcases and 3 stories. You'll listen without trying to fix. Can you do that? Clara nodded and looked scared, and then not as scared. Harbor Light was more than a building. It was a new grammar. On Mondays, we poured concrete and remembered our verbs. On Tuesdays, we planted thyme in boxes because herbs are the only thing that forgive overwatering and neglect at the same time. On Wednesdays, we ran wire for call lights and learned that emergencies don't arrive politely. On Thursdays, we held a practicum in patience, where the assignment was to repeat yourself kindly to someone who asked the same question 4 times. On Fridays, we cleaned the break room the way a mother cleans a kitchen when she still believes her children are coming home for dinner. Marcus blistered. Nate complained. Clara cried after her first intake because the woman had hands that looked like my mother's and asked, "Will my son visit?" Clara lied and said yes because the truth would have broken the room. Rhea came each Friday with a legal pad and a look. "Tell me your mistakes loud," she said in the staff circle. "If you don't, the building will tell them louder later. And it won't be as kind." I kept my office in the front hall where the light was clean. I didn't make an executive chair. I used the old wooden one from my kitchen, so I wouldn't forget what chairs are for. Every morning I walked the halls and asked the tape measure how it was feeling. I learned the names of every worker and every volunteer and the lady at the bakery who gave us yesterday's bread for free because her mother had died in a place that smelled like bleach. At the end of month 1, Marcus had 4 arms. Clara had a posture that didn't beg. Nate had a jaw that clenched less at 9:30. At the end of month 3, the first residents moved into the finished wing, 12 rooms with windows that face the garden and floors that don't punish a fall. We did not throw a party because moving in is not a party. It is a relief and a grief and a new set of keys that don't feel like yours yet. We made soup instead. Clara stood at the stove and learned to stir without burning. She learned to serve herself last. At the end of month 6, the garden knew our names. The thyme spread like gossip. The roses pretended not to like us and then bloomed anyway. The pathstone settled the way a story does when you tell it 3 times and finally find the right order. Marcus tried to quit in month 7. He said the dust got into his bones, and Angel said, "No, the work got into your excuses," and handed him gloves that fit and told him to lay tile like he was apologizing for something. He came back the next day with a sandwich for the electrician and a softer voice. Nate tried to sell us a supplier in month 9, and Rhea said, "Try that again, and I'll put you on toilet duty for a year." And he said, "That's ridiculous." And she said, "Toilets are how a building tells you if you love it." And he shut up and learned to read spec sheets like they were poems. Clara did not try to quit. She tried to fix too much and learned the hard way what the elders in the intake room kept trying to tell her: "Don't steal our work from us." She came to me on a Thursday with eyes like rain. "How do I help without taking the wheel?" "Offer your hands without moving their feet," I said, "and keep the tea hot." Word spread. Not the kind that ruins, the kind that saves. Women came with bags and papers and stories and the names of people who let them down in ways so ordinary it made you hate how normal cruelty can be. We made rooms. We made schedules. We made coffee black for the nurse who prefers it mean. We made a wall of photos with no plaques because names change. Faces don't. City people came with clipboards and took notes and asked for numbers, and I gave them the kind I like: occupancy, retention, nights slept through, pounds of zucchini harvested, board minutes that end with laughter, the number of times Mrs. Lang said, "I feel human again." Newspapers came. We let them in on Tuesdays when the light is least vain. They wrote about the model and the mission and the woman in the blue sweater who built it, and they spelled Iris correctly, and for once that felt like mercy. A year passed like a thing you don't believe until it's in your lap. The second wing opened. The resident council voted to call it the Maples, even though there are no maple trees within 50 miles. "We can still honor them," Mrs. Lang said. "We honor a lot of things this county forgot to plant." Marcus stopped checking his reflection in windows and started checking the level on doors. He got good at things that don't come with praise: fuses, thresholds, procurement that doesn't make the plumber swear. Angel started letting him set the schedule on Wednesdays, and he didn't brag about it, which is how I knew he was changing. Nate started laughing at the right time, after someone else did. He earned the quiet respect of a woman named Willa, who never trusts men with good hair. He learned that volunteers flake unless you give them a job that matters, so he started giving them jobs that matter, and then they stayed. Clara grew into intake like a shoe that finally stops rubbing. She learned to ask, "What do you want?" instead of assuming the answer. She called residents by their last names until invited otherwise. She stopped calling me Mama at work and started calling me Miss Dillo, and neither of us took it personally. 4 years and a season stretched into us. Rhea kept her pad and her look and sued 2 sons who tried to steal a mother's checkbook, and one so fast it made the judge smile. Lorna caught a leak in our numbers before it became a story we'd regret. Angel got a new tattoo of a rosemary sprig because remembrance belongs on muscle. And me? I turned 75 and realized my bones belong to this hill the way our fence belongs to the wind. I kept walking the halls. I kept carrying a notebook and writing down things people say that could become policy. "Don't put us in matching gowns," Mrs. Hushu told me. "I want to look like myself when I forget." We wrote it into the handbook. No matching gowns, plenty of cardigans, colors chosen by the women themselves. Fashion is sovereignty even when your hands shake. One evening after dinner, Clara found me sitting on the back steps watching the sky spread itself thin. She sat beside me without asking like she used to when she was 5 and afraid of thunder, but didn't want to say the word fear. "I'm sorry," she said, "for the dessert you burned in month 2? For trying to author you," she said, "for calling my fear love. For believing Nate's voice before my own, for forgetting that your hands were the hands that built me." I tried to author you too, I said. When you were 19 and wanted to drop out and be a dancer, and I said no because I was scared. We make every mistake twice. Once when we're young enough to forgive, once when we're old enough to know better. She leaned her head on my shoulder. Do you forgive me? I forgave you the day you were born, I said. I had to. I was going to make mistakes, too. We sat with the sound of plates and the TV in the lounge playing a show where everyone speaks softly so they don't scare the furniture. The 5-year mark came with no trumpet. We don't like trumpets at Harbor Light. They're for people who want the neighbors to clap. Rhea came anyway with a small cake and a file. We're at the deadline, she said, closing my office door. If you want to pull the lever, I have the will I drafted 2 years ago ready to sign. $500,000 to each of them, the rest to Harbor Light and the network fund. I looked at the paper. I looked at my children, their faces now lined with the right kind of tired, the kind you earn. I don't know, I said. Then don't sign, she said. Real law is patient when it can be. I called them into the office. You're free, I said. Your obligation is done. You can go make whatever life you want. You can sell condos in a city that forgets names. You can learn to sleep late. You can be the people you wanted to be before a porch made you different. Or you can stay. Marcus swallowed. We want to stay. Nate nodded. I miss the sound this building makes when it's sleeping. Clara smiled, small and real. I don't want to be good at anything but this. I didn't cry. Not then. I waited until I was in the laundry, folding towels still warm from the dryer, and then I did, because the laundry is where we let the fabric of the day tell us what it held. I tore the will. Rhea gasped because lawyers do that on instinct, then laughed because she has learned my instincts too. I handed her another paper. Use this one, I said. She scanned it. Executive Director, Marcus Dillow. Director of Operations and Procurement, Nathaniel Kerr. Director of Resident Life and Intake, Clara Dillow. Residual estate to Harbor Light Commons Network. A perpetuity with a board that includes one resident from each site with a binding vote. Bind us to them, I said, so we can't forget who owns this place. Rhea nodded. I'll file it at 9. We held a small circle in the multi-purpose room that night. Residents, staff, volunteers, a few stray dogs with scarves. I told the truth into a microphone that pops on peas. I started this place because I didn't want to be told what to knit, I said. I kept it because I never want any of you to be told what to be. Mrs. Chu raised her hand. I would still like a knitting circle, she said, and everyone laughed like a clean window. It didn't end there. That's the thing no one tells you about justice. It does not end. It moves. The county sent us the old library that smells like glue. We turned it into day rooms and a clinic and a studio where Mr. Lang teaches photography on Saturdays using donated cameras that still have their own ghosts inside. A food truck parked itself in our lot and never left. We let it stay because the tacos taste like an apology we never got from anyone else. Soon the state asked us to show them the map. We don't do franchising, I said. We do recipes you can smell from the street. We went to 3 towns with the same problems and put our hands on their old buildings and listened to what the walls wanted. We wrote grants without begging. We said no to a man who wanted naming rights for a wing in exchange for a check with too many commas and too much perfume. On Clara's birthday, a girl with bright sneakers and a chipped tooth came with her grandmother in a taxi that coughed. The girl had my daughter's eyes from 30 years ago and my mother's chin and a laugh I would pay to hear again. She put a small box on my desk. I made this in school, she said. It's ugly. I opened it. It wasn't ugly. It was a crooked clay lighthouse, white with a red stripe that wobbled. It's perfect, I said. It's for the garden, she said, so the people who get lost at night can see where to go. I put it on the windowsill where it catches the morning like a pocket. I look at it when I start to forget that all of this was a choice. When I think of revenge now, I think of napkins and spoons and a porch, and the way a building learns your name if you stay long enough. I think of my children laying tile with knees that'll talk later, and the first resident to walk the entire path without help, and the day Nate installed the last grab bar and turned to me and did not ask for approval because the building had already given it. People write to me and say, "You got your revenge," and I write back, "No, I got my ending, which is better." Quiet does not trend, but it lasts. I still drink cardamom tea on the porch every morning. I still lock the second lock and the one in my head. I still hold Rose letters when thunder rolls, not because I am scared, but because she loved me enough to teach me how to build a door. And that's all this is, door work. If this long, ordinary, stubborn road sat with you, if you tasted the cardamom or heard how the ocean claps when truth speaks, then don't leave without telling me where you're listening from. This is Revenge Stories with Michelle, a home for quiet courage and true endings. Tap like so the next tired heart can find us, subscribe so you don't miss the next door we build, and tell me in the comments where you are. Your voice matters here. Your story matters too.